Two alien women caught in a rusted trap. They whispered goodbye. Then they heard human footsteps.
Lyridon Verge, outer eastern tracks, 17 kilometers beyond known map boundary. No surveillance, no return signal. Nari knew they were pushing it. The map zone ended back near the cracked surveyor pylon they'd passed 2 hours earlier. Everything beyond that was abandoned forest, terrain too dense for drones, too damp for vehicles, and too quiet for comfort. But they were low on root splices and dried tubers, and the shelter rations wouldn't last past tomorrow. She'd weighed the risk when they set out. Go hungry or go farther. Nari chose farther. She wasn't reckless. Not anymore. But since the collapse, survival demanded lines be crossed, quietly, deliberately. And the last time Arizin had coughed blood into her hand from moldy rootstock, Nari had sworn they wouldn't eat fungus again. The air under the canopy was thick. Still, everything smelled like rust and moss and wet bark. Wirethorn vines hung across the trail, sharp enough to slice fabric if they weren't careful. Nari took the lead, machete out, sweeping low to clear underbrush. Arizin followed close, one hand always resting on the satchel of collected roots, the other nervously brushing strands of white hair out of her face. They didn't talk. Noise attracted attention, even if no one lived out here anymore. Nari crouched by a lichen-covered stump. "This one's fresh," she said quietly, pointing to a patch of upturned soil and snapped reeds. "Something dug here in the last 12 hours. Arizin dropped to a knee beside her. "Tubers. Or rot beetles. Be careful." They started digging. Their hands moved quickly, practiced. This wasn't new. Nari had foraged since the resettlement failed. Since the community vote rejected her kind from the aid roster. Being half-Allen made you someone else's problem. But now she was Arizin's only chance. Arizin didn't remember much of life before the fall. Full Allen, younger than Nari by 5 or 6 years, maybe 22 standard cycles. She followed Nari since the quarantine fences went dark. She was quiet, introspective, watched people more than she spoke. She had soft eyes and a scar across her left shoulder from a fall that still flared in the cold. Nari had carried her that night. They'd been alone ever since. "Got one," Arizin whispered, pulling up a pale root the size of her wrist. Nari nodded. "Keep going. If we find 4, we can risk boiling it." That was when the ground shifted under Nari's knee. A faint click, dull and deliberate, barely louder than the creak of a tree branch. She felt a snap of pressure across her ankle, and then pain. The trap clamped shut. Nari grunted hard, not a scream, but close, as her body twisted sideways and hit the ground. Cold metal tore into the joint between shin and boot leather. Blood welled instantly, soaking through the torn fabric of her black utility wrap. She tried to reach down, but the pain short-circuited everything. Her muscles locked. Arizin turned, and before Nari could speak, another trap snapped shut. This one took Arizin just above the ankle. She screamed, short, sharp, and cut off. She collapsed in the moss beside Nari, shaking. The sheer slate-gray fabric she wore was torn open at the hip, and the trap's iron teeth had pierced through skin. Blood pulsed between the edges. Nari tried to move, then froze, sweat already on her neck. The pain was getting sharper. "Don't touch it," she said through her teeth, voice low but firm. "I can't. Nari, I can't." Arizin's breathing was shallow, hands shaking violently as she hovered over her leg. "I don't know how to." "Don't move. You'll make it worse." Nari reached over, her fingers finding Arizin's. They squeezed tightly. "You're not dying," she said. It wasn't a reassurance. It was a decision, but her chest felt tight. The traps weren't new. They were from the old predator nets, left behind after the Verge was cleared decades ago. Illegal now, but still lethal. And no one came out here to clean them up. Nari lay flat, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the surrounding terrain. The forest was getting darker. Above them, the moss-covered branches filtered out most of the fading daylight. Wind stirred faintly, nothing more. Time passed. 10 minutes. Maybe more. Arizin was trying not to cry, but her lips were pale. Blood loss was already starting to set in. Her hands trembled violently whenever she moved. Nari took a shallow breath. "Listen to me. You pass out. I drag you out with my teeth if I have to. But don't you give in. You hear me?" Arizin gave the smallest nod. Silence stretched. Then they heard it. Footsteps. Real ones. Not animal. Not claws. Heavier. Measured. Nari's fingers tightened. The sound grew louder, branches shifting under deliberate weight. Someone walking directly toward them. She reached for her belt, but her blade had fallen. Arizin shifted, lips parted in panic. She looked at Nari as if to ask, should we scream? Should we run? They couldn't do either. And then the figure came into view. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, layered in faded thermal wear and a patchy brown canvas coat. A scarf hung loosely around his neck, dusted at the ends. His boots were caked with pale gray mud. One hand rested on a long-forgotten surveyor's pack slung behind his back. His face was rough, unshaven, hair streaked with gray, eyes unreadable. He stopped as soon as he saw them. Didn't speak, didn't draw a weapon. He knelt. Nari stiffened. "Don't come closer," she growled. He ignored her, quietly removed his scarf, then shrugged off his coat and laid it on the moss near her. "You're going to pass out if I don't get that off you," he said, his voice low but firm. "That trap's cutting through tendon, and you're losing too much blood." Nari didn't respond. She just watched him. His hands were rough but careful. He knelt beside her trap, examined the hinge, wiped away the blood with part of his sleeve. "Old pressure coil model," he muttered. "Saw one near Hollow Gorge a few years ago." Then, quietly, he said, "This'll hurt." He braced the jaws, twisted something, then forced the trap open with a sharp snap. The release triggered a sudden flood of heat and pain down Nari's leg, and her vision blurred. But the pressure stopped. He wrapped the leg immediately, cloth and compression gel from his pack. Didn't speak, didn't touch her more than necessary. Didn't look at her chest, even though the torn strap left most of her upper body bare. She watched his jaw tighten just once when he realized she was shivering. Then he moved to Arizin. She didn't resist. Her gray eyes locked onto him like a hunted animal, but she didn't move. He did the same, opened the trap, cleaned the wound, wrapped her gently. Carried her first. She weighed barely 45 kilos. His steps were deliberate, careful, steady. When he returned, Nari asked again, "Why help us?" He looked down at her for a long second. Then, "Because I was here, and no one else was." He lifted her next, adjusted her weight against his chest, and started walking back through the trees. She didn't struggle. She just stared at the side of his face as the forest faded behind them. Rollins' shelter wasn't visible from the tree line. He made sure of that. A fallen comms tower formed the outer ridge of the entrance, a jagged wall of scorched alloy and tangled fiber cabling, now overgrown with moss and blackroot vines. He slipped through the collapsed conduit tunnel, ducking beneath the warped panel frame, and carried Nari in with slow, deliberate steps. Inside, the temperature rose sharply. The space was narrow but organized. A salvaged solar lamp cast warm, amber light across the walls. Folded blankets lined the corners. A heat coil glowed beneath a platform of scavenged insulation foam. 3 large crates had been repurposed into storage for dried food, medical supplies, and tools. Everything smelled faintly of boiling herbs and melted frost filter. He laid Nari down first, gently, carefully, onto the thermal bed near the back wall. Her leg was still bleeding through the wrapping, and her jaw clenched with every shift of weight. She didn't say anything, just followed his every movement with sharp, cautious eyes. Then he returned for Arizin. She was lighter, still shaking from shock. Her lips were pale. When he brought her inside, she looked around as if she didn't believe what she was seeing. Walls, light, warmth. A sealed space with no wind. She hadn't been in one for months. He laid her beside Nari, draping another thermal blanket across them both. Then, finally, he stepped back, took off his outer coat, and hung it on a bent steel hook beside the old water reclaimer. Nari's voice broke the silence. "What is this place?" Rollin didn't look up right away. He poured hot water into a synth rubber bowl, tore open a small pack of antiseptic leaves, and dropped them in. "Former relay station. Weather grid outpost. Before the collapse. Why are you here?" He turned to her. "Because no one else is." Arizin's voice was quiet. "Are you alone?" A pause. Then, "Yeah." Nari pushed herself up slightly, biting down on a grimace. "You live here?" "Off-grid. 12 seasons now." I trade with the scrap run caravans that pass the southern trench. Mostly keep to myself. He paused. Didn't expect to find anyone this far east. Nari didn't speak again for a while. She was watching the ceiling now, where faint sunlight seeped in through a split panel. Her breathing was uneven. Her exposed chest rose and fell under the thermal blanket. Her fingers trembled under the weight of fatigue, but she didn't let them show too much. Arizin shifted beside her. Can we stay? Just for tonight. Rollin nodded once. Yeah, of course. Then he moved toward the heater. Nari whispered something to Arizin in Elenian, short and hushed. Arizin glanced down and nodded. Rollin returned a few minutes later with a new set of bandages, a coagulant patch, and 2 sealed meal packets. He sat beside the girls without saying a word, opened the first packet, and handed it to Arizin, still warm, a soft rice mash with kelp protein and heated root. Her fingers hesitated before she accepted it. She ate slow, eyes flicking between him and Nari. Where did you get this? She asked. Trade. One of the old supply convoys dumped a ration bin 2 months back. I sorted what was still edible. Nari looked at him then. Longer this time. She was trying to read him, not just his posture, but his eyes, his voice. What kind of man would drag 2 injured strangers into his shelter and not ask anything in return? Rollin didn't stare back. He was already unsealing the second meal pack and setting it near her knee. You didn't have to help, she said flatly. No. Why did you? He let out a slow breath. Because I saw the traps, and I knew what they were. And I don't like watching people bleed to death when I have a heat source and food sitting 20 meters away. She didn't reply, but muscle in her jaw flexed. Most men don't help for free. I'm not most men. Silence again. Heavy. Close. Rollins stood. You'll need to wash before I rewrap those wounds. The antiseptic works better on clean skin. He moved to the back of the shelter and unsealed a small crate, revealing a portable wash basin, a reused cloth, and a bottle of sterilizing rinse. You can use this. I'll step outside. Nari narrowed her eyes. You think we can't walk? I think you can barely stay upright. The basin's closer. He didn't wait for permission. He simply walked out the front, pulling the curtain across the makeshift door behind him. The 2 women sat in silence for several seconds. Then Arizin exhaled. He left. Nari let her head fall back against the wall. I know. I don't think he's lying. I don't either. Arizin looked over at her. Do you think we're safe here? Nari didn't answer right away. Then, safer than outside. They took turns cleaning each other's wounds. Slow. Careful. Arizin peeled away the bloodied wrap from Nari's leg, rinsed gently with the sterilizer, and pressed a fresh patch over the deeper cut. Nari helped Arizin next, her hands steadier than expected. Neither of them spoke much while they did it. Rollin didn't return until the basin was back in place and both women had crawled under the thermal blanket again. When he entered, he stopped at the curtain, eyes low. Still okay? He asked. Arizin gave a small nod. Thank you. For the food. And heat. Rollin stepped in slowly, holding something in both hands. 2 dry undershirts, folded neatly. I know your clothes are soaked, he said. These aren't much, but they're clean. He placed them on the edge of the bedding and turned away before either woman could react. Walked back to his corner of the shelter and sat, pulling a thin blanket over himself and leaning against the metal wall. Nari watched him for a long time. He didn't look back. And when the shelter finally went quiet, when the lights dimmed and the heater pulsed gently beside them, she allowed her hand to drift sideways to Arizin's fingers. They laced quietly, and for the first time in 2 nights, they slept warm. The heater buzzed softly in the corner, casting a low red glow across the shelter. Rollin had long since dozed off, head tilted back against the wall, arms crossed, legs outstretched. His breath was slow and quiet, barely noticeable under the hum of the cracked ventilation system above. Nari opened her eyes first. Her leg throbbed, but the pain was dull now, muffled by pressure wraps and warmth. She lay half-curled under the thermal blanket, the unfamiliar comfort of real heat making her skin itch beneath the sweat-dried grime. Her hand was still wrapped loosely with Arizin's. She hadn't pulled away in her sleep. She turned her head slightly. Arizin was still asleep beside her, breathing soft and even, face relaxed in a way Nari rarely saw. The sharp lines in her expression, stress, hunger, fear, had softened overnight. Her lips were parted slightly. Her shoulder peeked out from under the blanket where the borrowed shirt had slipped down. Nari reached to gently pull it back over her, but paused halfway. Her hand hovered there. She looked across the room at Rollin. He hadn't moved in hours. His scarf had slid down during the night, revealing a pale scar across his collarbone. Long, thin, the kind you got from a ruptured containment latch or salvage shard. He hadn't mentioned it. He hadn't explained much of anything. Nari let her hand fall back to her side. Later that morning, he stirred. She watched as he blinked himself awake, rolled his shoulder with a faint wince, and rubbed the back of his neck. When he noticed her watching, he nodded once. A greeting, nothing more. Nari broke the silence. "You always sleep near strangers?" He gave a slight shrug. "You're not strangers anymore." That answer didn't quite land softly, but he didn't say it with intention. Just fact. Arizin stirred at the sound of voices and blinked blearily at both of them. "Is it morning?" Nari sat up carefully, adjusting the blanket around her waist. "Something like that." Rollin stood, moved to the corner crate, retrieved 2 water pouches and a tin of protein tablets. "You should both eat something. Your blood pressure is going to be wrecked from yesterday." Nari accepted the pouch but spoke again after a few seconds. "You said you've lived here 12 seasons?" "Yeah." "What happened to everyone else?" Rollin looked at her for a moment before answering. "Most of them left when the grid failed. The rest didn't make it out. And some of us," he trailed off, "some of us just stayed." Nari squinted. "By choice." "Not at first." He handed her the pouch. "But after a while, it gets easier to stay invisible than to try starting over somewhere that doesn't want you." That hit a little too close. Arizin drank quietly, then asked, "You're human, right?" Rollin raised an eyebrow. "I am. Why didn't you report us?" He paused. "To who?" Nari watched him sharply. He continued, "There's no registry patrols anymore. No sector census teams. And even if there were, what would I tell them? That 2 malnourished women wandered into an obsolete trap field and I didn't leave them there to die. That I gave away half my food stores to the wrong genetic bracket." His voice was calm, not angry, just tired. Arizin looked away, swallowing hard. Nari cleared her throat. "We're not used to kindness. I can tell." They sat in silence for a while longer. Rollin moved around the shelter with slow, efficient gestures, resetting the coil heater, folding up one of the storage blankets, organizing his tool roll. Everything he did was deliberate, quiet, functional. Eventually, he turned back to them. "The wounds need redressing again. I've got synth gauze and clean mesh. It's up to you." Nari hesitated, then nodded. He walked over slowly, sat down at the edge of the bedding, close but not imposing. He started with Arizin. She extended her leg nervously, eyes flicking toward Nari once before holding still. Rollin unwrapped the bandages with gentle fingers. The bite marks were deep but clean. The antiseptic had worked overnight. No visible swelling, and the inner tissue looked like it had started repairing already. "You'll keep the scar," he said, matter-of-factly, "but the tendon's intact." She didn't respond, just watched his hands. When he wrapped her foot again, she inhaled sharply, only once, then exhaled. He moved to Nari. Her wound was worse. More tissue damage. The blood had dried into the cloth. When he peeled it away, she flinched and grunted quietly. He didn't apologize, just worked quickly. His fingers were strong but slow. She felt the warmth of his palm on her skin as he applied the healing patch, then the pressure of clean mesh tightening around her shin. "You'll need to stay off that leg for another day at least," he said. "Then we'll test your balance. I'm not sending you back into the Verge until I know you won't collapse halfway." Nari narrowed her eyes. "You're planning to send us back?" Rollin didn't flinch. "That depends on you." Arizin sat up a little straighter. "We don't have anywhere to go." Rollin stood. "Then we take it one day at a time." He moved toward the door again. Nari stopped him with her voice. "Why did you really help us?" He turned, but this time he didn't hesitate. "Because I've stepped in traps like that before, and no one came. That landed differently." Nari didn't respond. Neither did Arizin. When he stepped outside, the air in the shelter shifted. Warmer now, heavier. Arizin looked at Nari. I believe him. Nari nodded slowly. Then, unexpectedly, Arizin asked, why did you pull me in front of you before you blacked out? Nari looked away. Because I knew if one of us passed out, the other needed to hold on. But you were bleeding worse. Nari exhaled. Doesn't matter. Arizin moved a little closer under the blanket. Their legs brushed. She didn't move away. Neither did Nari. Outside, Rollin sorted through a pile of metal salvage beneath a tarp, pretending not to listen. But he did. He listened to every word. The sky outside had dimmed again by early evening. Light filtered weakly through the cracked ceiling panels of the shelter, casting soft golden streaks across the floor. Rollin had finished boiling root slices for broth and was dividing them into 3 salvage cups. The smell was earthy, faintly bitter, but warm. It filled the small space like a reminder that something, anything, could be shared. Nari and Arizin sat close together on the bedding. Neither had tried to stand. They wore the dry undershirts he'd given them, oversized and stretched at the shoulders, the sleeves rolled or torn to fit. Nari had tied one side into a knot at her waist, the fabric slipping off her collarbone where the frayed strap of her old wrap peeked through. Arizin wore hers looser, draped to mid-thigh, her bare legs tucked underneath her. They didn't say much. Rollin handed them their cups, then settled back against the opposite wall with his own. No table, no formalities. Just heat against cold hands and silence thick with unspoken questions. You always live like this? Nari asked eventually. He shrugged. Simple's easier. Less noise. You haven't spoken to anyone in how long? A year. Maybe longer. Nari blinked. And before that, he didn't answer right away. Then, my partner left during the 3rd ration panic. Didn't say where. Just walked. Nari looked down at her broth. She understood. No one stayed when things got hard, not in the Verge, not in the outer colonies. People didn't say goodbye. They just didn't come back. Arizin shifted beside her. Do you ever get lonely? Rollin raised his eyes. Every day. That landed harder than either of them expected. He sipped from the cup, then set it aside. But I don't chase people. It's easier to build something alone than risk watching it fall apart again. The way he said it wasn't bitter. It was tired. Arizin leaned her head slightly onto Nari's shoulder. We were supposed to join a convoy 2 months ago, she said softly. Didn't have the right stamps. Nari traded food to get us north. Then the trade route collapsed. She kept us alive the whole way. Nari tensed slightly. She didn't like being talked about in front of strangers. But Arizin wasn't trying to flatter her. She was just explaining. Rollin nodded. That's a lot of weight to carry. Nari shrugged, not meeting his eyes. Somebody had to. Later, after the heater had dimmed to its lowest setting and the shelter filled with soft shadows and the sound of slow breathing, Rollin moved to the far end of the room and unrolled a spare thermal mat. He didn't look at them as he lay down, only said, if the wounds itch, it means the patches are working. Don't scratch. Nari lay on her side. Her leg ached. Her hands were cold, even under the blanket. Arizin lay beside her again. The closeness felt normal now, necessary, even. Their limbs brushed with every small movement. Heat passed between them in a way that felt instinctual, human. Minutes passed. Then Arizin whispered, almost inaudibly, he didn't look at us. Nari didn't answer right away. I know. I kept waiting for it. For him to glance down. Or hover too long. He didn't. Arizin's voice was softer now. That makes it harder. Nari turned slightly. Harder. To know what he's thinking. Nari could feel the heat from Arizin's chest close to her own now. The blanket was thin. Every breath felt amplified in the space between them. Her heart was beating faster than she liked. He's not like the others, Arizin whispered. He didn't ask what we are. Didn't ask how old we are. Didn't ask for anything. Nari was quiet. She knew what that meant. What it did to people like them. Women who'd spent too long being offered shelter with conditions. Nothing in the Verge was free. But this was something else. A kindness that asked nothing in return. It was disarming. Nari's voice, when it came, was quieter than usual. You want to stay? Arizin hesitated. I think I already did. Nari felt something in her chest loosen. It frightened her. Across the shelter, Rollin shifted slightly on his mat. He wasn't asleep. He'd heard every word, but he didn't move, didn't speak, just closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the morning would be different. The rain started before dawn. A steady patter of water hitting the upper metalwork of the shelter, slow at first, then harder, soaking through the moss-lined gaps in the ceiling panels. A few thin streams dripped into rusted bowls Rollin had strategically placed over time. They pinged quietly, rhythmically. Familiar. Nari stirred first. She was half awake, one arm thrown over her eyes, legs still stiff and heavy under the wrap. The warmth beside her had shifted. Arizin was closer than before, curled inward, her forehead barely touching Nari's shoulder. Their legs were pressed together. Neither of them had moved much during the night. For a few seconds, Nari let herself lie still. She didn't feel afraid, just aware of everything. Her own breathing, Arizin's breath against her collarbone, the faint aches in her joints, the way the shirt clung lightly to her skin from yesterday's sweat. The heater had gone out 2 hours ago. The room was cold now. She adjusted her position slightly, brushing her arm along Arizin's side to pull the blanket higher. Arizin murmured something, not quite a word, and shifted closer without opening her eyes. A soft touch, instinctive. There was a pause in Nari's mind, like a line she could choose not to cross. She left her hand there, quiet, resting just above Arizin's hip, where the shirt was gathered and the blanket had slipped. Minutes passed like that. Then Rollin's silhouette moved on the far side of the shelter. Nari's eyes flicked over. He was already up, quietly resetting the heating unit near the wall, feeding the coil a fresh thermal charge. His back was turned to them. The light from the energy arc flickered across his arms as he worked. He was in a different shirt now, something sleeveless, his spine visible under pale skin stretched tight from years of lean eating and hard labor. She watched him in silence. She expected him to glance their way. He didn't. Instead, he finished with the heater, stood, and poured water into a narrow filter pot. Steam rose quickly. The smell of boiled root filled the room again. He looked tired but calm. Arizin shifted and opened her eyes slowly. Rollin noticed the movement and gave a brief nod, not quite a smile, but close. "I kept the heat low last night," he said quietly. "Didn't want to dry the wraps out too fast." "Thank you," Arizin said softly. Nari sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her thigh. Rollin walked over with 2 cups, simple hand-cleaned scrap ceramic. He handed them over without ceremony. "You want to stretch today," he said to Nari. "Slow, 1 leg at a time. If the tissue pulls, stop." Nari nodded, running her fingers over the edge of the cup. "And what's the plan?" "For now." Rollin poured his own cup. "We eat. Then we talk." Nari's brow twitched slightly. "Talk about what?" He met her eyes. "What staying means." That changed the air a little. Arizin looked down into her drink. Nari didn't blink. "You've already decided?" "No," Rollin said. "But I need to know if you have." A long silence. Then Nari asked, "Why would you want us here?" Rollin didn't answer immediately. He sat on the bench opposite them, resting his elbows on his knees. His voice was low when it came. "Because it's been 3 years since I've woken up to voices I didn't imagine." Arizin's throat worked quietly. She looked over at Nari. Nari felt her jaw tighten, her chest tighten. There it was again, that strange weight. Not pity, not desperation, just honesty, clean and unadorned. She could feel the damp heat on her skin, the closeness of Arizin beside her, the way her own hand was still resting against Arizin's lower back, just beneath the shirt. Her body wasn't tense. It should have been. Later that afternoon, when the rain softened into mist and Rollin was busy repairing a broken water inlet near the shelter's edge, the 2 women sat alone by the heat coil. The shelter was warmer again, light pooling across the metal floor. Nari bent her legs slowly, testing the range. Arizin watched, biting the inside of her cheek. "You're healing fast. You helped." Arizin looked at her. "You kept me warm last night." Nari didn't answer. Her eyes were searching the floor. Her fingers tightened slightly on her own thigh. Arizin placed her hand gently on Nari's. "Can I ask something?" Nari nodded once. "Have you ever wanted something just because it was safe?" That caught Nari off guard. Her throat went dry. Arizen's voice was a little quieter now. Not because you earned it. Not because someone offered it. Just because it felt okay to want. Nari turned to look at her. Arizen's face was close. Warm. Her eyes wide and quiet and steady. The space between them was narrow now, barely a hand's width. Nari's breath was audible. Not deep. Not steady. Then Arizen leaned forward, slowly, not uncertainly. She brushed her lips once against Nari's cheek, soft and still. Not asking, just sharing. Nari didn't move for a second. Then, finally, her hand turned and laced with Arizen's again. Behind them, through the cracked wall seams, the rain started up again, soft, slow, like it wasn't sure whether to return or leave them in peace. Roland came in late. The mist had thickened into fine drizzle by the time he finished sealing the broken water inlet outside. His jacket was soaked through, shoulders dripping, hair matted to his forehead. He stepped in quietly, shook off the wet at the entrance, and dropped the soaked coat over a heat pipe. Nari and Arizen were seated by the heater, still wearing the worn shirts. Nari's leg was elevated on a low crate, now wrapped in fresh mesh from the medkit. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and damp metal. The silence wasn't cold, it was full. Roland paused as he looked at them. They both looked up. Their faces had shifted since the morning. Softer, tired but calm. Arizen was leaning gently into Nari, her shoulder touching Nari's arm. Not in need, just together. He didn't comment, just nodded. "I patched the leak," he said, voice quiet. "We'll have enough runoff to refill the filters by tomorrow." Nari stood, slow but steady, using the edge of the crate for balance. She took a step. The injured leg trembled under her weight. Roland moved on instinct. He stepped in before she could fall, catching her by the waist, steadying her with both hands. They both froze. Her hand was on his chest. He wasn't looking at her chest or her lips. He was looking at her eyes, brows furrowed slightly, like he didn't know whether to say something or back away. Nari didn't pull back right away. She looked down at his hands. They were rough, warm. He hadn't let go yet. She swallowed once. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice wasn't sharp this time. He released her gently. "You're improving faster than I thought. You didn't think I would?" "No," he said. "I just didn't expect to care this much." That stopped her. Behind them, Arizen stood up slowly, silent, watching. She didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. Roland took a step back, wiping his hands on his pants, eyes low. "I should get the heating plates set." Nari didn't move. Arizen spoke softly. "You don't have to keep stepping away." Roland looked up. "I mean it," she said. The silence that followed was heavier this time, but not uncomfortable, just exposed. "I didn't help you for this," he said quietly. "Not for warmth, not for thanks." "We know," Nari replied. "But it's hard to ignore how it feels," Arizen added. Nari sat down again, slow and deliberate. Her leg ached, but her chest ached more. She reached for the edge of the heater and held her hands out, as if the warmth there might tell her what to do next. "Back when we still had convoys," Nari said quietly, "a man gave us bread. One meal, then followed us for 2 nights. Said we owed him. Said it was fair." Roland didn't interrupt. Nari kept her eyes on the firelight. He had soft hands, clean teeth. Told us we were lucky he even looked at us. "Did he touch you?" Roland asked, his voice quiet, still but loaded. "No, he didn't get the chance." Arizen sat down beside her again. "But every time someone helps us, it feels like we're waiting for that moment. The one where it turns." Roland nodded once. "I get it." He sat across from them, close now. The heater hummed between them, casting a soft red hue across their faces. Arizen leaned forward. "What do you miss most?" Roland didn't answer immediately. His eyes unfocused, distant. "I miss brushing against someone without them flinching. I miss hands that didn't tense when I got close. I miss sitting this close to someone without wondering if they're counting the seconds before they pull away." No one spoke. He exhaled, rubbed his face. "Sorry." Nari moved first. She stood, limped forward slowly, and sat down beside him. Close. Her hip touched his. She didn't say a word, just sat. Still, he didn't move. Arizen followed. She moved to his other side. kneeling first, then lowering herself gently beside him. Her shoulder met his. Her hand brushed his elbow. Nari looked at him. We've slept beside each other 2 nights now. No one made a move. No one crossed a line. Roland looked between them. Nari continued. That means something. Arizin added softly. You don't scare us. His throat moved. He didn't speak. And then Arizin reached up, gently touching his jaw. Not pulling, just anchoring. Her fingers brushed the side of his face, slowly, giving him time to stop her if he wanted. He didn't. Nari leaned in next. Not fast, not dramatic, just close enough that he could feel the heat of her breath at his neck. Roland sat still. Every nerve in his body was lit, but he didn't move. He didn't want to ruin it. Then Nari whispered, If we stay, this doesn't have to be about safety. Arizin leaned her head onto his shoulder, lips near his collar. It could be about choosing. The heater crackled softly, and under the dim light of the shelter, they stayed like that for a long time, 3 bodies in quiet contact, breathing the same air, warming the same skin. No rush, no obligation, just presence. When the lights dimmed to sleep mode again, none of them pulled away. The storm passed overnight. By morning, the rain had stopped, leaving only mist hanging low across the tree line beyond the shattered shelter walls. Soft light bled through the ceiling cracks, catching on the moisture in the air. The heater had gone silent. The quiet inside was complete. Roland opened his eyes to warmth on both sides. Nari lay to his left, her head nestled near his shoulder, one arm resting lightly over his chest. Arizin was to his right, curled beneath his arm, her breathing slow and steady, face relaxed against the fabric of his shirt. None of them had moved during the night. He didn't want to. For a long while, he stayed there, eyes on the uneven metal of the ceiling, listening to the sounds of breathing, of peace. His hand shifted slowly across Nari's side, fingers tracing the hem of the oversized shirt she still wore. It was half loose now, riding high along her hip, revealing the curve of her leg and the faint outline of scar tissue beneath the bandage. She stirred as he moved, then blinked up at him. Still here, she said, her voice rough. Yeah, Roland replied. Arizin yawned softly, eyes half-lidded, not lifting her head. What time is it? Roland smiled faintly. Time stopped matching seasons ago. Nari sat up, groaning as her injured leg protested. Roland steadied her instinctively, hand at her lower back. She didn't pull away. Instead, she reached over and brushed a few strands of white hair from Arizin's forehead. Their eyes met briefly. The air felt different now, less fragile. I dreamed we were outside, Arizin murmured, stretching slowly. But it was warm, safe. Nari gave a small grunt. Then it wasn't real. No, Arizin said. It felt real. Roland stood slowly, collecting the kettle. You want that dream to be real? He asked. They looked up at him. Then we start today, he said. One step at a time. You stay here. We grow what we can. We insulate the ceiling before frost season. We learn how to live together. Nari raised an eyebrow. Just like that? No, he said. Not just like that. You'll have to choose it. Every day. Arizin nodded softly. What about when you don't want us here anymore? Roland looked at her, then at Nari. Then I tell you. To your faces. Not with silence. Not by disappearing. Nari stood fully now. She limped slightly, but she didn't need support this time. She crossed the small space to the rusted wall panel where her old torn utility wrap still hung. She stared at it, then reached for Roland's coat instead, the one he'd given her on the first night. It still smelled like him, like dust, metal, and skin. She turned back to him. If we stay, we're not just your guests. You're not, he said. You're not just our protector. I never wanted to be. Nari stepped closer. Her voice dropped steady. We'll share the work. The weight, the warmth, the bed. Arizin stood beside her, silent but sure. Roland met their eyes. Then it's decided. They spent the day clearing space. Together, Arizin swept the floor. Nari used a scavenge pole to reinforce the corner supports where rot had weakened the structure. Roland guided them through the old inventory, showing where he kept the water filters, where the emergency heat cells were stored. They found old clothes in a sealed crate from years back, dry, intact. Arizin found a soft wrap and smiled for the first time in days. Nari pulled on old thermal pants, cinched at the thigh. Her leg moved easier now. That night, the bed was made together. They didn't rush anything. They didn't need to. The shelter light dimmed to red as they settled in again. The three of them under one blanket this time. No space between limbs, no hesitation. Nari lay between them, her leg elevated slightly, one hand on Rollins' chest, the other resting in Arizin's. The heat they shared wasn't survival anymore. It was chosen, willing, real. Rollin whispered once into the stillness, not even sure they were still awake. "You saved me too, you know." No one replied, but Nari squeezed his hand once. Arizin kissed his shoulder softly, and the night held all three of them like they finally belonged. Together, for good. The storm season had passed. Lyridon Verge was quiet now. Still damp, still untamed, but not hostile. The sun filtered gently through the mist above the collapsed ceiling panels, painting soft lines of pale gold across the shelter floor. Heat coils buzzed low. Steam from a pot of boiling root tea curled in the air, untouched. Nari stood barefoot near the edge of the bed platform, wearing only one of Rollins' older shirts, unbuttoned halfway and falling loosely over her hips. The sleeves were rolled just above her elbows, and one shoulder was exposed where the collar had slipped. Her heeled leg bent slightly at the knee as she shifted her weight, stretching quietly. She watched the steam drift as if it mattered. Arizin was still under the blanket behind her, bare legs tangled loosely in the fabric, head half buried in Rollins' chest. Her breath was soft, steady, one hand curled lightly over his ribs. She didn't speak, but she was awake. Both of them were. It was just that no one wanted to move. Not yet. Nari ran a hand through her hair, still damp from the morning wash. Her fingers slowed as she felt a presence behind her, Rollin rising from the bedding. His footsteps were light but steady as he came up behind her. She felt his hand settle gently at her waist. "You're walking easier," he murmured. She didn't look back. "I forgot what mornings felt like without pain." He slid his arm fully around her. "Then let's make this one different." She turned. They kissed slowly. There was no urgency, no hesitation, just skin meeting skin in warmth. His hand moved up her side, pulling the shirt against her ribs as he deepened the kiss. Her body leaned into his instinctively. When she opened her eyes again, Arizin had joined them, still in the blanket, one leg bare, her hair loose over her shoulder. Arizin held out a hand. Nari stepped into it. Rollin followed. They didn't speak again. The three of them moved together with quiet understanding, lowering themselves into the bedding they had remade just the night before. The thermal coils were already warming. Nari settled against Rollin's chest, Arizin behind her, the curve of her body fitting naturally to Nari's back. Arms found hips. Hands found breath. Rollin's fingers slid slowly across Nari's stomach beneath the shirt, and her muscles tensed, then eased. She reached back with one hand, finding Arizin's thigh, drawing her closer. Arizin's breath warmed the nape of her neck. She kissed it, then the curve of Nari's shoulder, slow and soft. Nari exhaled, not sharply, but fully. They undressed one another gently. Rollin's hand brushed Arizin's side as she moved between them. Nari guided her with touch, not words, helping her lay across Rollin's chest, where his hands explored her bare back with open reverence. No part of this was rushed. Every movement was quiet, patient, earned. Nari kissed them both. Arizin's fingers slipped under the blanket to where Nari's thigh met hip, and her touch lingered, curious, tender. Rollin slid his palm along Arizin's waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left. Their skin was warm, their breathing uneven, but no one asked for more than what was offered. Every kiss given was returned. They shifted, wrapped, shared. No one led, no one chased. Nari arched beneath Rollin's hand, her lips parting as he kissed just below her collarbone, and Arizin kissed her mouth on the other side. Their bodies moved slowly, rhythm found not in speed, but stillness between motion. Waiting, holding, listening. They made love like people who had nothing to prove, just warmth to share. When it ended, no one said a word. Rollin held them both, arms heavy but gentle. Nari's fingers traced faint circles on his chest. Arizin lay tucked into Nari's shoulder, her leg draped across both of theirs. The morning light had shifted now, spilling across the shelter floor in golden bands. Somewhere outside, water dripped from the trees. The world hadn't changed, but they had, and none of them wanted to move.